Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin, Daf 137 of Masechta Shabbos. Now, before we proceed to the overview, I just want to address the elephant in the room. I need to get a haircut. I know, I need to get a haircut, but here's the thing. It's the 3 weeks. So I don't know, I'm not really going to get a haircut in the 3 weeks. Also, by the way, I didn't shave before the 3 weeks either. And that was because my shaver or beard trimmer was out of batteries. And actually, I can only charge it with the charger that I have back at the other apartment I was living in for a while, which also gets back to the other whole thing, which is it's freaking Corona. Everything froze during Corona. Nothing's changing. No haircuts, no getting new sublets, no charging your beard trimmer. We're in Corona. Just nothing is happening right now. And except for Daf Yomi's happening, and work is happening. You can still do awesome work from your house, but no haircuts, no eating, no. But you can do, no, I wash my clothes. No cooking, no, nothing really. Everything stopped 3.5 months ago. Okay, today we're studying, Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin. Anyways, it's a pretty cool daf actually. So, you got a hald kappa shtickle at the beginning. It's talking about, what happens if you got these two little guys who need a bris, but and it's Shabbos, and one of them is supposed to have his bris on Shabbos, but the other one is not, either on Friday or on Sunday. So it's a whole thing. So you gotta hald kappa shtickle. It's not too bad. You just gotta keep in order, who says what. Then we talk about what happens if the little guy is a shtickle sick. What do you do? We talk about the Berachas at a bris, which is pretty interesting, probably familiar to many people. And then at the end, we conclude the 19th perek, the perek of Rabbi Eliezer de milah, and we move on to the 20th. Wow, 20th perek. That's crazy. Of perek Tolan. So let's get started. So we're starting on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. Here we go. Mishayilo shnei tinokos. Now, somebody who has two babies, okay? Echad lamul achar Shabbos, ve'echad lamul b'Shabbos. Okay? Now, one of these, it's Shabbos. One of these guys is 7 days old. The other guy is 8 days old, right? So one of them, the one who's 8 days old, of course, his bris should be today on Shabbos. However, there is one of them one of the babies is only 7 days old, which means that really his bris is only supposed to be tomorrow on Sunday. Okay? It's a day too early. V'shachach, but you made a mistake. Umalas shel achar Shabbos b'Shabbos. And you by accident did the bris today on Shabbos for the child that was only 7 days old, who was supposed to be circumcised the next day on Sunday. So we say chayav. Everyone agrees. There's no machlokas here. Everyone agrees, chayav, that you need to bring a korban chatas because lemaise you didn't even do a mitzvah. Kilu, what'd you do? You did a bris milah for a child who was 7 days old. There's no mitzvah of bris milah bichlal, and therefore you're going to be chayav to bring a korban chatas. However, what happens if things are slightly different? Echad lamu be'erev Shabbos ve'echad lamu b'Shabbos. Now, what happens if it's Shabbos? Okay, what happens if it's Shabbos? And there are two kids in front of us. Now, the thing is, one of these kids was really supposed to be circumcised the day before. His bris was really supposed to be on Friday. Okay? But for whatever reason, I can't tell you why, the bris didn't happen on Friday. And now it's Shabbos. And there are two babies here. One of them is the baby who it's day 9 of his life, and the other one is the baby who it's day 8 of his life. So obviously you're supposed to do the bris for the one who it's his 8th day of his life, but you make a mistake and you do the bris for the one who is 9 days old. So you are being mekayim the mitzvah of bris milah, but it's a bris milah shelo b'zmana, and it's generally, Meikra din not docha Shabbos. So again, Echad Lamu be'erev Shabbos, if one of them was supposed to have been circumcised on Friday, V'echad Lamu b'Shabbos, and one of them is supposed to be circumcised today on Shabbos, V'shacha chumal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos, and you made a mistake and you did the bris for the one who's 9 days old. So Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, Rabbi Yeshua poter. Rabbi Eliezer says that you chayev a korban chatas because even though you did a mitzvah, right? It's tar b'dvar mitzvah, but also mitzvah. You made a mistake. You were supposed to do the bris for the child who's 8 days old. But you did the bris for the child who's 9 days old. And l'maisa you did a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to circumcise this little guy, but just not today because it's Shabbos. Wait till tomorrow because it's not Docha Shabbos. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, you have to bring a korban chatas. According to Rabbi Yeshua, he says, look, l'maisa it's tar b'dvar mitzvah v'asa mitzvah. Right? You made a mistake when it came to the mitzvah, but at the end of the day, you did a mitzvah. There's still a mitzvah to do bris milah for this guy. So therefore, you're going to be potter from bringing a korban chatas according to Rabbi Yoshua. Now says the Gemara, Rav Huna masni chayev, Rav Yehuda masni potter. Okay, so here we go. So Rav Huna says chayev, meaning Rav Huna learns our Mishnah the exact same way that we learned our Mishnah, which is that in the Reisha, it says chayev, meaning that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree chayev. Now what is the case that it would be chayev? As we said, that it's Shabbos, and there are two kids here. One of them is 8 days old, one of them is 7 days old. One of them is supposed to be circumcised today, one of them is supposed to be circumcised tomorrow on Sunday. You made a mistake, and you circumcised the kid who's 7 days old. So according to everybody, you're going to be chayev because you didn't even b'chlal do a mitzvah. Circumcising a kid who's 7 days old is not a mitzvah, so you're going to be chayev a korban chatas. Whereas Rav Yehuda learns that the Reisha of the Mishnah is saying potter, right? Rav Yehuda masni potter, which means that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree that this person who circumcised this kid is going to be potter from a korban chatas. Now, the question is, what is this case? So, in order to say that they both say that you're potter, then you would have to say that the Mishnah, that the Reisha is talking about where there were two kids to circumcise. One of them was 8 days old, and one of them was 9 days old, right? And we're saying that you circumcised the kid who was supposed to be circumcised the day before, i.e. the one who was 9 days old, okay? And we're saying that according to Rabbi Yehuda's understanding of the Mishnah, what the Mishnah is saying is that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer are saying that this guy will be potter, because at the end of the day, he did a mitzvah. Where they argue would be where there were two kids. One of them was 7 days old, and one of them was 8 days old, and you circumcised the kid who was only 7 days old. There is where Rabbi Eliezer says you'll be chayev, but Rabbi Yoshua will say that you are potter, because even though you didn't even do a mitzvah, but it was in the context of a mitzvah. Therefore, you are going to be potter. And we're going to go through this now in the Gemara. But the important part for now is that regarding the Reisha of the Mishnah, where both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree, so according to Rav Huna, he learns it exactly like we learn it, which is that they both say chayev, and that is talking about a case where there was a kid who's 7 days old and a kid who's 8 days old. Whereas, according to Rabbi Yehuda, both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree that you are going to be potter. And that's talking about where, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Reisha is talking about a situation where there was a kid who was 9 days old and a kid who's 8 days old, and you circumcised the kid who was 9 days old. Therefore, even though you made a mistake, you nonetheless did a mitzvah. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua agree that you would be potter. Okay? Let us read it inside. So starting again from the beginning of the Gemara. Rav Huna masne chayev, Rav Yehuda masne potter. So Rav Huna says that the first case in the Mishnah, where both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree, they are both saying chayev, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that the first case in the Mishnah, where both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree, they're both saying potter. Rav Huna masni chayev d'Tanya, and he brings a brisa. Amr Shimon ben Elazar says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, lo nechleku Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Yoshua al mishahayu lo beis tinokos echad lamu b'Shabbos v'echad lamu achar Shabbos. That says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua both agree that al mishahayu lo beis tinokos, that there were two kids. It's Shabbos and there are two kids. Echad lamu b'Shabbos v'echad lamu achar Shabbos. One should be circumcised on Shabbos, the other one should be circumcised on Sunday, i.e., one of them is 8 days old and one of them is only 7 days old. V'shachach, and he forgot, i.e., he made a mistake, or he forgot which one's which. Umalez shel achar Shabbos b'Shabbos, and he did the bris for the one who's 7 days old that was supposed to be done on Sunday. He did it on Shabbos. Shehu chayev. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agreed that he's going to be chayiv because he didn't b'chlal do a mitzvah. Aman nechleku. Where is there a machlokes? Where is Rabbi Yeshua going to jump in and say he's actually pater? Al mishahayu lo beis tinokos. That is talking about where there were two kids. Echad lamu be'erev Shabbos v'echad lamu b'Shabbos. And now it's Shabbos and there are two kids in front of us. One of them was supposed to have been circumcised on Friday. For whatever reason he wasn't. And now it's Shabbos and there are two kids. One of them is 9 days old. One of them is 8 days old. V'shachach umal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. And you did the bris for the one who was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, i.e. the one who's 9 days old and really isn't Tocha Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas. Rabbi Eliezer says you're chayev chatas because even though you did a mitzvah, you made a mistake, so you chayev a korban chatas. Rabbi Yeshua poter, whereas Rabbi Yeshua says you're poter because even though you made a mistake, lemaise, you did a mitzvah because it's a bris milah shelo bizmana, but at the end of the day there was a mitzvah to do a bris and you did it, even though you should have really waited till Sunday. And they both learn out their opinions from avodas kechavim. And as Rashi points out, as we learned on Daf Samach Tes Amud Aleph, that all korban chatases are compared to avodah zareh. That all korban chatases are compared to avodas kechavim. Okay, and therefore, if we're right now trying to determine, right, as it says over there, right, Torah achas yelachem, will be one Torah for you in the context of the korban chatas of avodah zareh. So therefore, we compare all korban chatases in the Torah to the korban chatas of avodah zareh, and therefore, if we're trying to figure out if this fellow is going to be chayav a korban chatas or not, well, let's look at avodah zareh. So Rabbi Eliezer savar kavodas kechavim, ma'avodas kechavim, am rachman lehisayvid v'chi avid mechayev hachinami lo shna. So Rabbi Eliezer's argument is, look, I'm going to read that again. Ma'avodas kechavim, just like when it comes to avodas kechavim, am rachman lo sayvid. The Torah says don't do avodah zarah, v'chi avid mechayev. And if you do avodah zarah, well then you're going to be chayev a korban chatas. Hachinami, the same thing. Hachanami, the same thing over here. Lo shna, it makes no difference. Right? Therefore, if you have a child who's 8 days old, child who's 9 days old, you shouldn't be doing the bris milah of the child who's 9 days old on Shabbos. Wait till Sunday. And therefore, I don't care that you did a mitzvah, technically, but you weren't supposed to, and therefore you'll be chayav a korban chatas. Rabbi Yeshua says, Rabbi Yeshua hasam dilav mitzvah hacha mitzvah. Rabbi Yeshua says, look, avodas kechavim obviously has nothing to do with mitzvah. It's avodah zarah. Whereas this, he did a mitzvah. You know, sure, he wasn't supposed to do it today, but at the end of the day, it wasn't just, a random thing. Like, he was mekayim a mitzvah, even though he shouldn't have done bris milah today, but l'maaseh, he did the mitzvah of bris milah, so he's going to be pater from a korban chatas. Rav Yehuda masni pater. Now, Rav Yehuda, okay, so that was Rav Huna's opinion. He's in line with the brisa of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. And they say that both Rabbi Yehuda that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer agree that in a case where you accidentally circumcise the kid who's 7 days old, they agree that you're going to be chayav a korban chatas because you didn't b'chlal do a mitzvah. However, when you circumcise the kid who's 9 days old, Rabbi Eliezer says that you're going to be chayav a korban chatas. Rabbi Yeshua says, look, l'maisa you did a mitzvah, so you can be pater from a korban chatas. Now, Rav Yehuda masni pater. Rav Yehuda, however, says that the reisha of the Mishnah, where both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agree, is where they say that they both agree that you're going to be pater. What's the case? The Tanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Reb Meir. Lo nechelku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua. The Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua both agree. In what case? Amishohayu lo beis tinokos echad lamu be'erev Shabbos v'echad lamu b'Shabbos. Right? One of these kids was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, but for whatever reason he wasn't. Now it's Shabbos, and you have two little guys in front of us. One is 9 days old, one is 8 days old. V'shachach u'maleh shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos, and he accidentally circumcised the 9-day-old little guy on Shabbos. Shu pater. Certainly in that case, you are going to be pater because you did a mitzvah. But even Rabbi Eliezer is going to agree that you're pater because l'maisa you did a mitzvah. Amanechliku, where do they argue? Mishahayulo beis tinokos echad lamu achar Shabbos ve'echad lamu b'Shabbos v'shachach u'malet shel achar Shabbos b'Shabbos. Where do they argue? They argue when one of the kids was 7 days old and the other kid was 8 days old. So obviously you're supposed to circumcise the little guy who's 8 days old, but by accident you circumcised the kid who is 7 days old. Okay? So in that case, that is where there's a machlokas. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, Rabbi Yeshua poter. The Rabbi Eliezer says, look, you're chayev chatas, you didn't bichlal do a mitzvah. Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be poter because even though you weren't mekayim a mitzvah, it was still in the context of a mitzvah. Right? They both learn enough from avodas zarah. Rabbi Eliezer savak avodas kechavim. Avodas kechavim amar rachmana leisayvid v'chiyavin mechayev. Hachanami lo shna. Rabbi Eliezer says, look, just like avodas zarah, when it comes to avodas zarah, the Torah says don't do avodas zarah. If you do avodas zarah, you chayav a korban chatas. Here also, don't do the bris milah for the 7-day-old kid. And if you do, you chayav a korban chatas. I don't care that you were like, it was like in the context of a mitzvah. For Rabbi Yeshua, hasam lo tarid mitzvah, hachad tarid mitzvah. Over there, when it comes to avodah zarah, you're not tarid, you're not busy with this mitzvah. Over here, you're busy with the mitzvah. So now, and therefore Rabbi Yeshua says you're pater. So now, let's talk about what this tirda de mitzvah thing is for a second, because this is going to be really important coming up. What's this tirda de mitzvah? Tirda de mitzvah is this, so like even if you have a situation where one of these little guys is 8 days old and the other one is 7 days old, the fact of the matter is, there is a bris that needs to be done today. Right? Meaning before you circumcise anybody, you have two little guys, right? One of them, his bris is supposed to be today, on the 8th day. And therefore, there is a bris, there is a mitzvah that needs to be happening, and you're busy with that mitzvah, you're getting ready for it, whatever it is, and then, b'shas ma'aseh, at the time of the bris, you actually made a mistake, and you ended up circumcising the kid who was only 7 days old. But since it was in the context of a mitzvah, that there was a mitzvah to be done, it was in the context of a mitzvah, and you made a mistake, and you circumcised the wrong kid, so Rabbi Yoshua says, look, it's in the context of a mitzvah, therefore you're going to be pater. Okay? Now, the reason why I say this is important is because there actually is a mitzvah to be done over here. Okay? What would happen in a situation, let's say, where it's not where one kid was 7 days old and the other kid was 8 days old. What about in the case with Friday, right? One kid was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, the other one on Shabbos. But in this case now, the one who was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbos was accidentally circumcised on Friday, and the one who was supposed to be circumcised on Friday was circumcised on Shabbos, which means that comes Shabbos morning, there's only one kid that needs a bris, and that kid is 9 days old, and therefore there's bichlal you're not supposed to be doing a bris bichlal today. You should wait till Sunday. So therefore there was no tirda de mitzvah. There was no mitzvah that was supposed to really be done today. And in that case, everyone is going to agree that you be chayav a korban chatas. And that's super important. That when Rabbi Yoshua says that you're pater, or when anybody's going to say that you're pater, it's dafka when there's a tirda. It's dafka when there is a bris that's supposed to be happening today, but you made a mistake and you circumcised the wrong kid. Then we have to start figuring out, well, was he 7 days old? Was he 8 days old? Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Shimon ben Elazar, Rav Meir, Kilu. Then we have all these kashas. But in a situation where like there was no kid on Shabbos that is 8 days old that's supposed to have a bris today, well, in that case, everyone is going to say that you are going to be chayav a korban chatas. It's only when there is a bris that's supposed to be happening today, and in the confusion, you end up circumcising the wrong kid, well then is where we start getting into different opinions over here. Fine. So now, with that introduction, Tani Rabbi Chia taught, Omer Hayi Reb Meir, the Reb Meir would say, Lo nechliku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua don't argue, Al misha ayulo beis tinokos echad lamu be'erev Shabbos ve'echad lamu b'Shabbos. That they both agree when there are two kids, one was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, and one was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbos, i.e., one of them is 8 days old, and one of them is 9 days old. V'shachach umal es shel erev Shabbos b'Shabbos. And you made a mistake, and you circumcised the 9-day-old kid on Shabbos. No, so what did we say? We just said a minute ago that according to Reb Meir, in this case, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua would agree that you're potter, because the Maaseh, you did a mitzvah. But look what he says. Shu chayav. That both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua admit that he's going to be chayav. When you circumcise the kid who's 9 days old, they both admit that you're going to be chayav. Why would that be? So now where do they argue? Right? When there are two kids, one of them was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday, one of them on Shabbos, i.e. one of them is 7 days old and the other one is 8 days old. And he made a mistake. And you accidentally circumcised the 7-day-old kid on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatas, Rabbi Yeshua poter. Rabbi Eliezer says that you're chayev a korban chatas. Rabbi Yeshua says that you're poter, that you're poter. Just like Rabbi Meir had said earlier, right? That when it comes to a situation where you have the 7-day-old kid and the 8-day-old kid, and you accidentally circumcise the 7-day-old kid, so Rabbi Eliezer says chayev, Rabbi Yeshua says poter. The big difference is that in the Reisha of Rabbi Chia's brisa, it says that when one of them is 9 days old and the other one is 8 days old, and you accidentally circumcise the 9-day-old kid, they're both saying that you're chayev, even though you're doing a mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Hashta Rabbi Yoshua Seifa de lo ka'avid mitzvah poter. Well, Rabbi Yoshua in the Seifa, where you circumcised the 7-day-old kid, where you're not even doing a mitzvah, there's no mitzvah of milah. And Rabbi Yoshua says, poter, Reisha de ka'avid mitzvah mechayev. So the Reisha, where his mom is doing a mitzvah, okay, maybe it's not the 8th day, it's the 9th day, but there's a mitzvah of bris milah. How could Rabbi Yoshua possibly say that you're chayev over there when he says that you're potter when the kid's 7 days old? So Amri Dver Rabbi Yanai says by the Besmedrash of Rabbi Yanai, Reisha kigon shekadam umal shel Shabbos be'erev Shabbos. This brisa of Rabbi Chia, when it says that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer admit that he's going to be chayav, it's because it's not just, well, meaning there's more to the story. Yes, you circumcised the 9-day-old kid on Shabbos, but the 8-day-old kid was actually circumcised the day before on Friday when he was 7 days old, which means that comes Shabbos morning, comes Shabbos, there's only one kid that needs a bris, and he's 9 days old. That in this case, there was no reason for Shabbos bichlal to be nidche for any kind of bris. And therefore, if you do the bris for this 9-day-old baby by accident on Shabbos when there was no reason b'chlal why you should be doing any bris on Shabbos, well then everyone agrees that you're going to be chayav a korban chatas. Whereas Seifa nitna Shabbos lidchos. Whereas in the Seifa, i.e., when one kid is 7 days old and the other kid is 8 days old, well, there is supposed to be a bris today. You just made a mistake and circumcised the wrong kid, the one who's 7 days old. So there Rabbi Eliezer says, look, you're going to be chayiv because you didn't do any mitzvah. But Rabbi Yoshua says you're potter because there was, it was in the context of a mitzvah and you made a mistake. So therefore you're going to be potter according to Rabbi Yoshua. Amar Rav Ashi Rav Kahana. So Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, Reisha nami nitna Shabbos lidchos lidachos legabe tinokos da'ama. So then Rav Ashi asks, to Rav Kahana, he says, wait a second, but even in the Reisha, right, even in the Reisha, even in Reb Chia's Reisha, where he accidentally circumcised the kid whose bris was supposed to be on Shabbos, he did it on Friday, which means that comes Shabbos, the only kid who needs a bris is the one who's 9 days old, and therefore there's no reason to be docha Shabbos bichlal. And therefore we say that both Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer say that you're going to be chayiv. However, it says Rav Ashi, but even though, let's say in this particular case, there's only this kid who's 9 days old, and there's no mitzvah to be docha Shabbos, but the reason why the mistake happened in the first place is because, well, in general, you can be docha Shabbos for a bris that happens on the 8th day, meaning because there are cases in general where a bris is allowed to happen on Shabbos, that's what confused the people here, and that's what led to this 9-day-old kid being circumcised on Shabbos, the fact that in general, babies are able to be circumcised on Shabbos. Therefore, his mistake, even though there was no real reason, the fact of the matter is there was no kid who was 8 days old that needed a bris today in front of us, But the fact of the matter, but it's because in general, a bris is able to happen on Shabbos. So because of, in the context of bris milah in general, that's what led to this 9-day-old kid getting circumcised on Shabbos. Well, shouldn't we be able to argue that, therefore, because it was in the general context of bris milah, maybe Rabbi Yeshua would say that he's pater? So lahagaver milah is yav. But yeah, but true, in general, Shabbos is able to be nidche for bris milah, but not here, because this kid was, there was no 8-day-old kid around. Okay. Yeah, so that was this little piece. It was a shtickle, Yata hal cup shtickle, right? Okay, fine. Let's move on. So, says the new Mishnah, Ka'in nimo lishmone l'sisha la'asara l'chadasar l'shneim aser l'pachas v'liyoser. It feels like the first daf of Masechta Megillah, right? Megillah Nikres, right? What was it? B'yud Aleph, B'yud Beis, Yud Gimel Tes, what was it? Yud Daled Tesvav l'pachas v'liyoser, something like that. So here we say that a ka'in, a baby, nimo l'shmone, is circumcised on the 8th day, the Tisha, the 9th day, Asara, and on the 10th day, Achadasar, Shneim and the 11th and the 12th. Meaning on meaning he only gets circumcised once, not like all these days, but like if it doesn't happen on the 8th, it'll happen on the 9th, and on the 9th and the 10th, and we're going to figure out the different contexts. Ha Ketzad. How does this work? Kedarko l'shmona. So normally the bris will be on the 8th day. Nolad levein hashmashos nimul tisha. So now what happens if the kid is born bein hashmashos, right? Safek yom, safek laila. Now any day of the week. Let's say it's episode Tuesday, and it's Tuesday evening, and this little guy comes into the world. Now we don't know. Do we treat it like Tuesday? Do we treat it like Wednesday? So we say that so the bris will be on Wednesday, right? Even though it'll be the 9th day from Tuesday, and it's possible that he was technically born on Tuesday, but we can't say for sure because maybe he was technically born on Wednesday. Therefore, we do the bris on Wednesday, which is day 9 from Tuesday, which is where the suffix begins. What happens if it wasn't Tuesday? What if it was Friday? Okay, now we're not sure if he was born on Friday, in which case the bris should be the following Friday on day 8, or if we should treat it as if he was born on Shabbos, in which case the bris should be the following Shabbos, which would be day 9, but of course you wouldn't do the bris on Shabbos if out of suffix, so therefore you would push it off to Sunday, which is actually day 10. Okay, fine. Yom Tiv la'achar HaShabbos, but what if Sunday was Yom Tiv? You're not going to be doche Yom Tiv for milah shelo bezmana, so nimo la'chadasar, so then you do the bris on Monday, which is day 11, Shnei Yom Shel Rosh Hashanah, but what if actually it was Rosh Hashanah? So Sunday and Monday were both Rosh Hashanah. What about Lo Adu Rosh? Whatever. Sunday and Monday were both Rosh Hashanah, so Nimo L'Shnei Masar, so then you do the bris on Tuesday, which is day 12. Also if you have a child who is sick, so we do not do the bris milah until he gets better. Amr Shmuel, says Shmuel the doctor, that if he has a fever, once his fever goes away, we then give him 7 days to kind of chill out, and then we do the bris. They asked the kasha, when we say that once the child gets healthy, so then we give him 7 days, is that 7 24-hour periods, or maybe on the 7th day, miktsas yom kikulo, once already, the day begins, you can already do the bris. So Tashma, the Tani Luda, that Luda teaches, Yom Avra'aso Kiyom Hivaldo, that says Luda that the day that he gets better is like the day that he is born. So milah, what that means is Mayom Hivaldo lo ba'inan me'es le'es, af Yom Avra'aso lo ba'inan me'es le'es. Just like when it comes to when the little guy is born, so then we don't need to, wait 7 24-hour periods. No, just we wait 7 days, and then we do bris milah, even if it's less than 7 24-hour periods per se. So, so therefore we'll say the same thing when his fever goes away, so we don't need to wait 7 24-hour periods, it's just 7 days. Lo, adif yom avraso yom ivado di'ilu yom ivado lo ba'ina me'es leis vilu yom avraso ba'inan me'es leis. The Gemara says, no, don't say from Luda that because we say that the day that he gets better is like the day that he's born, therefore it means just like he's born, he doesn't need 7 24-hour periods. Just even once after part of the 7th day, he's already, you can already do the bris. Don't say that. Rather, the day that he gets better is shtickle stronger than the day that he's born, and that when the day when he gets better, you actually have to wait 7 complete 24-hour periods. Fine. New Mishnah, Eluain tzitzin ama'akvenes milah. Nice. Basar achofe ezrova atara ve'eno ochel b'tshuma. So these are the part of the orla that are ma'akev the bris milah, right? These are part of the foreskin that if you do not remove them, well then the bris is not kosher. And as the Mishnah says, ve'eno ochel b'tshuma. If he's a Kohen, he would not be able to eat truma because it says as Rashi points out, sha'arel asur b'truma, that a Kohen who doesn't have a circumcision is not allowed to eat truma. So we say what? So if you have some of the foreskin that is like covering the top of the penis, but not the whole top, just like where how do I explain this? Well, I don't know. It's not that hard to explain. Basically, the penis, there's the long part, and then at the top, it kind of let's just say a mushroom. Anyways, so where it kind of gets wider. So if there's foreskin kind of covering that, so then what? So then that would need to be removed. That's considered part of the orla, and it would need to be removed. And if you don't remove it, so then the bris is not kosher, and if he's a Kohen, he can't eat truma. Fine. Ve'im haya bar basar misaknu pnei maris ha'ayin. Also very interesting. What if this little guy is a chubby little guy, and even after the bris, there's extra fat on his penis, and it looks like he wasn't circumcised, and we're worried about maris ha'ayin. We don't want people to see. Okay, fine. Okay, I don't know who's looking, but we don't want people to see. So you have to somehow remove more stuff so that nobody gets the wrong idea. I guess the yentas really, really go deep. They don't stop yenting. They even want to, look at your bris, spread rumors about your bris. Yentas, man. Ma'avla para esamila ki'ilu lo mal. Oh, so if you do, right, remember, on daf chveis nicht, on daf Lamed Kuf Lamed Gimel, right? So we described the different parts of the milah. So there was the milah, which is removing the orla, and then there's the priya, which is removing some kind of membrane that is under the foreskin. So if you didn't do that, if you didn't do priya, so then it's not a kosher bris milah. Fine. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Avina, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rab Basar Achofe Es Rov Govha Shel Atara. Okay, fine. So so when we say that it needs to cover the majority of ki'ilu, the top of the penis, it's not talking about around, it's talking about height. So meaning even if there's just a little piece of foreskin that's kind of covering majority of the height of that beginning of the tip of the penis. So then even if it doesn't go majority of the way around, just tall, so you got to get rid of that. Okay. Now we say that if he had a chubby penis, okay, then we have to make sure that nobody's getting the wrong idea. Fine. So Amar Shmuel says Shmuel Kain Amasurba Bibasar Roinoso Kozmanch Miskashe. Just gets better and better. Venira Mahu Eno Tsarich Lamu. Vimlav Tsarich Lamu. Interesting. So if you have this chubby kid and Roinoso Kozmanch Miskashe. I don't get what if this kid can get an erection. How is this kid getting an erection? But maybe we imagine in our minds what it could be if he would get an erection. Okay, v'nira mahol, and then I guess we make a cheshbon. So if theoretically this little guy would get an erection, or maybe if somehow he does get an erection, and then if that's the case, then all would be good. With the erection, everything would be pulled back enough so that it looks like he is circumcised. Well then, all good. Eino tzarich lamul. You don't need to fix anything. V'im lav. But if not, if he wouldn't look like he's circumcised when he has an erection, so then tzarich limol. Then you gotta fix that. Masnisa Tani, we learn in a brayser. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Kain Amsuba Babasar, a chubby little guy, Roin also Kozman Shemiskasha ve'eno nira ma'ul. So if he gets an erection and he doesn't look circumcised, right? So then, meaning even with an erection, he doesn't look circumcised. So then tzarich lemulo. So then you got to fix that. And if that's not the case, then you don't need to bris. You don't have to go back and fix it. My benayu ikabenayu near veno near. The nafkamina is when kilu, if the little guy gets an erection and then it kind of looks like he's circumcised, but kind of not. So according to Shmuel said, so kozmanche miskasha venira mahul, if when he gets an erection he will look circumcised. Well, that is the criteria. He needs to look circumcised when he has an erection. But if it's kind of gray area, kind of iffy, you would have to fix that. Whereas according to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, he says, no, the problem is when if he gets an erection and he dafka doesn't look circumcised. But as long as, that's the problem. But if it's kind of gray area, that's fine, don't worry about it. Weiter. Malvelo para, so we said, if you do milah without priya, well then it's not a good milah. So Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Hamal Omer Asher Kedushaну B'Mitzvos V'Tzvanu Ala Milah. So the Mohel, he says the bracha of Asher Kedushanu B'Mitzvos V'Tzvanu Ala Milah, right on the Milah. Avia Ben Omer, the father of the child, says Asher Kedushanu B'Mitzvos V'Tzvanu Lachniso B'Viso Shel Avraham Avinu, the God that commanded us to bring this child into the covenant of Avraham Avinu. Ha'omdim Sham Omrim, those who are standing there, they say Kishem Shenichnas Labris. Just like this child entered into the covenant, kachikanes l'Torah u'lechupa u'lemaisim tovim, he shall also enter into Torah and to marriage and to good deeds. V'mavarich omer, and whoever is going to make the bracha, often it's the person who names the child, says Asher Kidash Yidid mi beten, God who made holy Yidid mi beten. As Rashi points out, who is the Yidid? Yitzchak Avinu is called Yididya. Right, and it says mibeten, that already when he was in Sarah's womb, the mitzvah of bris milah was already commanded to Avraham Avinu, and that already from the womb there was the mitzvah of bris milah. So Asher Kidash Yidid mibeten, that already Yitzchak Avinu from when from the womb he was set aside for bris milah. Chok b'sher osam, and you put a sign in his flesh. V'tzetzav, and his offspring chasam bos bris kodesh, you have sealed with the sign of this holy covenant. Akain, therefore, b'schar zos, in reward for this, kel chai, the living God, chalkenu tzurenu, our chelek, our portion, our rock, tzaveh lahatzil yididu sherenu mishachas, command to save our fellow brethren, our flesh and our blood, mishachas, from destruction, on account of the covenant that we've put in our flesh. Blessed are you, God, who has made the covenant. Hamalas hagerim, somebody who circumcises converts, Omer, so he makes the same bracha of alamila. The Moel makes this bracha. And whoever then is making the bracha there says Asher Kedushaну Mitzvos V'Tzivanu Lamul Esagerim, to circumcise converts, Ulatif Mehem Dambris, and to extract from them blood of the covenant. She'ilmalei Dambris, that if not for the blood of the covenant, Lo Niskaimu Shemayim V'Aretz, heaven and earth would not exist. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Lo brisi yomam v'layla, if not for my covenant day and night, chukos shamayim v'aretz lo samti, well then it's as if I have not placed the laws of the heaven and earth. Baruch atah Hashem korei sabris, blessed are you, God, who has, executed the covenant.
Hamalas ha'avadim, somebody does milah for slaves. Omer asher kedushanim b'mitzvos v'tzvanu ala milah. V'amavarich omer asher kedushanim b'mitzvos v'tzvanu lamulas ha'avadim, to circumcise slaves. La'ativ me'em dam bris, to extract from them blood of the covenant. She'ilmulei dam bris, that if not for the blood of the covenant, chukol shemayim ba'aretz lo niskaimu, then there would not be the laws of heaven and earth. Shneamar im lo brisi yomim v'layla, if not for my covenant day and night, chukol shemayim ba'aretz lo samti, then it's as though I did not place the laws of heaven and earth. Baruch atah Hashem, koris abris, blessed are you God, who has executed the covenant. Hadron alach, Rabbi Eliezer de milah, we will come back to you, Rabbi Eliezer of milah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Tolenes amishameres b'yomtiv v'nosn l'tluya b'Shabbos. So says Rabbi Eliezer, if you have some kind of a container, imagine like, I don't know, a mason jar, maybe something bigger, I don't know, not exactly super clear, but you have some kind of a container, okay? And what you do is you take a like cloth strainer. I don't know, imagine almost like a cheesecloth, although I wonder if it's probably more permitting than a cheesecloth, but okay, something like that. You can take some kind of a fabric and hang it over the opening of the jug and maybe stick it into the jug a bit, and then you're going to pour some wine in there, and it's going to strain out the sediments and leave the wine. You're allowed to place this strainer into this jar on Yom Tiv, and if the strainer is already there on Shabbos, you could pour into it, but you wouldn't be able to put it into the strainer, apply it to put it onto the strainer on Shabbos, because we're concerned about making an ohel, interestingly enough, right? So if you have an open container and then you take this cloth and put it over the opening, you're making an ohel, a tent, which is interesting. The Chacham disagree and they say, no, you may not put this cloth on the opening of this jar on Yom Tiv. Rabbi Eliezer says you can. Chacham says you cannot. Say that you cannot because you're making an oil. And on Shabbos you may not pour wine into this strainer because they're concerned about borer. Rabbi Eliezer says that this is not, it doesn't consider this to be borer on Shabbos. Okay? I'm not exactly sure why, I guess. It says, Ein derech borer l'chach. It's not the way of borer. Why isn't this the way of borer? Maybe the way of borer is to directly from your food, like pick out the stuff maybe that you don't want. I don't know. But, says the Chacham, you would be able to pour into if the strainer was already there, you can strain the wine on Yom Tiv, I guess, because, it's ochel nefesh, and that would be acceptable. Now the Gemara asks, one second, so Rabbi Eliezer seems to not have any issue with putting this cloth over, right, to cover the container with this cloth on Yom Tiv, and he's not concerned about making a ohel. But one second, friends, where was it? It was Daf Kuf Chafei. So 12 days ago, we learned Hashter Rabbi Eliezer asufei oel arai lo mosfinan lemebed lechatchila shari. Guys, remember the sugya of the window shutter? And Rabbi Eliezer said you can only attach a window shutter to the window if it's both tied and dangling in midair, so that it's super clear that it's part of the house, and nobody, there's no concern about adding on to a structure on Shabbos. You guys remember that? He's concerned about adding on to a structure on Shabbos. And here he's saying you can mamish take a cloth and cover a container with it, even though your mamish making an ohel. So in the context of this window shutter, he was concerned about adding on to an ohel, and yet at the same time he's saying you can mamish make an ohel. This doesn't add up. According to Rabbi Eliezer, we don't even add on we don't even add on a temporary addition to a tent. And all of a sudden he's saying over here, you can mamish make a tent, you can mamish take cloth and cover a container with it and make an ohel. Mahi. Okay, so now what is this place where Rabbi Eliezer says that you may not add on to a tent? So of course it's not. As we learned in our Mishnah, when you have the window shutter, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Bisman Shekasher V'Talui Poka Kimbo, that as long as it is tied and dangling from the window, well, then you can use it to close the you can put it on the window, because then it's clear that you're not adding anything onto the binyan, onto the building. It's part of the building already. V'Imlav Ein Poka Kimbo, but if it's not both dangling and tied up to the building, so then you can use it because we're concerned about adding on to the structure. Chachamim say no, it's okay. Even if it's not kosher v'tali, and there was a machlokas, does it have to be kosher? Does it at least have to be tied? Whatever it is, but they say that it definitely doesn't have to be both tied and dangling, like Rabbi Eliezer says. Amr Rabbi Yochanan, Akol Modim, that both Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer admit she'ein osen oil aray b'tchila b'yomtiv, that they both admit, both Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim admit that you would not be allowed to mamish make an oil on Yom Tiv. Vein tzarich lo b'Shabbos, and certainly not on Shabbos. Lo nechleku ela lohosif. The question is, can you add on to an oil? Rabbi Eliezer Omer ein mosifin b'Yom Tiv vein tzarich lo b'Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer says you're not allowed to add onto a structure on Yom Tiv, and certainly not on Shabbos. V'chacham Omer mosifin b'Shabbos vein tzarich lo b'Yom Tiv. The Chacham said no, you're allowed to add onto a structure on Shabbos, and certainly you'd be allowed on Yom Tiv. So the question is, how could it be that Rabbi Eliezer is concerned about adding on to a ohel on Yom Tiv, and certainly on Shabbos, and yet he's saying that you'd be allowed to put this cloth on the opening of this jar and make an ohel? Doesn't he say that you're not allowed to make an ohel? So Rabbi Eliezer Savalak Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara answers, well, because this was in the context of food, right? Meaning you're adding this cloth to this container so that you can strain wine. So it's in the context of food on Yom Tiv. So that's what he says. So Rabbi Eliezer says, well, he says like Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanis, we learn in a brayse, in ben Yom Tiv l'Shabbos ela ochel nefesh bovad, that the only difference between Yom Tiv and Shabbos is food. Rabbi Yehuda matir af machshirei ochel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda says not just food, but even machshirei ochel nefesh, even preparations for ochel nefesh, such as putting the cloth on top of the container so that you can then strain your wine. So keilu, it's not mamish just straining the wine. The Chachamim admit that on Yom Tov you'd be able to strain the wine. The shaila is, can you add the cloth to the container so that you can then afterwards strain your wine? Rabbi Eliezer seems to be saying yes, and the Gemara wants to say Rabbi Eliezer is like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that not only are you allowed to do ochel nefesh, right? Not only are you allowed to prepare food on Yom Tov, but you can even do things to enable you to prepare food on Yom Tov, such as adding this cloth to the container. So Rabbi Yehuda mati af machshir ochel nefesh. So the Gemara says, yeah, but Emer d'shamina le Rabbi Yehuda b'machshirin she'ef shel asosa me'erev Yom Tov. Machshirin she'ef shel asosa me'erev Yom Tov mishamas le. Rabbi Eliezer adif mid Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, I'll read that again. Amar, I will say, d'shamina le Rabbi Yehuda, that when Rabbi Yehuda says that you're even allowed to do machshirei ochel nefesh on Yom Tov, so then, that's only things that were impossible to have been prepared from Erev Yom Tov, machshirin that you could not have possibly done Erev Yom Tov. But such as this case where you could have attached this cloth to the container from Erev Yom Tov, so Rabbi Yehuda, I don't know that Rabbi Yehuda would say that you'd be allowed to attach it on Yom Tov. Well, Rabbi Eliezer, adif from Rabbi Yehuda. Well, Rabbi Eliezer is a Tana. Yeah, not only is he a Tana, he's an older Tana than Rabbi Yehuda. He can argue and say, look, even this strainer that you could have done already from Erev Yom Tiv, you could still do on Yom Tiv, because it's machshir ochel nefesh, and that is fine. That is why Rabbi Eliezer says you're allowed to put this cloth over the container and strain your wine. Fine. Okay, so I think it was like a pretty interesting daf today. We had some interesting sugyas. The most involved sugya, of course, was at the beginning, in terms of when you have these two children to circumcise on Shabbos. One of them is 8 days old, so obviously he should be circumcised on Shabbos. But then the other one is either 7 days old or 9 days old, and there's different sort of implications. So first thing we have to get out of the way and make clear right away, which is we are only talking about a situation when one of the children needs to be circumcised today on Shabbos. Ki'ilu, in the case where there was one from Friday and one from Shabbos, i.e. one of them is 9 days old on Shabbos, one of them is 8 days old on Shabbos, but you made a mistake and you circumcised the one who was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbos, you did it before Shabbos. So now Lemaisa on Shabbos, the only one who needs a bris is the one who's 9 days old. Everyone agrees you'll be chayav a korban chatas because there was no mitzvah bichlal to be done today. That would have been Docha Shabbos. So, if there was no tircha of a mitzvah, right, so then everyone agrees to be chayav a korban chatas. It's when there are two kids mamish today on Shabbos. One of them, it's his 8th day, and then one of them is either the 7th day or the 9th day. So, Rav Huna and Rav Shimon ben Elazar learn it just like our Mishnah learns it, which is that if one of them was 7 days old and one of them was 8 days old, so then both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agree that you will be chayev a korban chatas, since you did the bris on the one who's 7 days old and there was no mitzvah that was done. However, if one of them was 8 days old and one of them was 9 days old, right, which means, and you accidentally did the bris on the one who's 9 days old, well, then you made a mistake, but l'maisa you did a mitzvah. Okay? So therefore, Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be pater, Rabbi Eliezer says you're nonetheless going to be chayev. Now, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda expressed the opinion that both, when one kid was 8 days old and one kid was 9 days old, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua admit that you're going to be pater because l'maisa you did a mitzvah, right? The machlokas is when one kid was 7 days old and one kid was 8 days old and you circumcised the kid that was 7 days old, there Rabbi Yehoshua still maintains you're going to be pater since l'maisa was in the context of a mitzvah. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says, look, l'maisa you didn't do a mitzvah, so therefore you're going to be chayev. Fine. What happens if you have this kid who is sick? So once he gets better, you wait 7 days and then you do the bris. We talked about the brachas that happen at a bris milah, which was pretty interesting because they are familiar. And then we talked about at the very end placing a strainer on a container on Yom Tiv in terms of making an ohel, and there we essentially got into machlokas between how far do we go when preparing ochel nefesh on Shabbos. According to Chachamim, you're allowed to prepare ochel nefesh, but you're not allowed to prepare meta ochel nefesh stuff. These machshirei ochel nefesh. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you can prepare machshirei ochel nefesh, but only if you could not have prepared them before Yom Tiv. According to Rabbi Eliezer, you can prepare machshirei ochel nefesh on Yom Tiv, even if you could have done it before Yom Tiv, and that's why he says that you're allowed to add this strainer to cover this container on Yom Tiv, but the Chachamim say that you would not be. Also, Rabbi Yehuda would say that you would not be. Fine. Zeo, friends, that was Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.